This chair has no arms. Like I have nowhere to rest my arms, so this is going to be an exhausting hour of holding this microphone up.
Okay, well, let's try to make it less than an hour then, because I don't know if we have too much to say about these phones.
I have at least an hour's worth of thoughts on this phone, Daniel. I don't know what you're talking about.
Amazing. Hello and welcome to the Android Police Podcast. My name is Daniel Bader.
My name is Will Saddleberg.
And where are you, Will?
I'm in lovely San Jose, California.
What are you doing there?
Samsung decided to announce some phones, and so I'm here.
Three and a half phones.
Four phones. Four phones. We can't.
Three and a half phones.
It's more than half a. Just because it's thinner doesn't mean it's less of a phone, Daniel. That's
it's less of a phone. But we'll get to that. It's also less. It's not an edge. That's not what it is. And I'm gonna stand. It's such a bullshit marketing gimmick that I'm so mad about this.
Okay,
but I will.
Okay, we're so far ahead of ourselves. But I need you to know, I was walking yesterday. We were walking from the hotel to where we needed to go to pick up our review units for the S25 Ultra. I'm with Ben Schoen and Joe Maring. And we're walking, and Ben's like saying the exact same thing you just said. Like, I don't get, it's not an edge. Why would they pick this name? And I was like, it's nostalgia. People remember the edge. Like James, AP's editor-in-chief, was like excited about the Edge brand coming back. Like he won't be alone.
When he found out that it wasn't a real Edge.
But it doesn't matter. People like brand names. They like. I remember that thing.
I don't think the Edge is a brand name, but we're not going to start here. We're not going to do that.
I think we're here.
Our listeners deserve better than to be thrown in media res into.
No, I think this is
the
great.
Middle of a sentence. Like,
we should touch on the Edge again.
Let's talk about the Edge a little bit. So, At the end of the show, Samsung teased a phone called the Galaxy S25 Edge.
Yeah.
If you have been in the Android ecosystem for a while, you know that this was a product lineup that Samsung used to differentiate itself from its S line early on, starting in 2014 with the Galaxy Edge. And it was basically a phone that had a single, very curved display that it leveraged for a whole bunch of gimmicks, right? Like you could check your notifications as a ticker on the side of your phone. It would light up if your phone was upside down to give you notification announcements. There were a bunch of APIs and stuff that never went off the ground, but slowly that was the technology that eventually integrated into the S7 Edge, which was like the flagship S7. And then from then on, like all of the flagship Samsung phones, even if they didn't use the Edge name, still had curved displays until a couple of years ago. So they're bringing it back, but they're not calling it the Edge because it has a curved display. They're calling it the Edge because it has a thin frame.
Yep.
Which is not it's bullshit. It's not.
Well, Razer was taken, so they had to do something. Look, I think it's a smart move personally. Like, I think reusing a brand name that they had that's been lying dormant for 9 years is not a particularly bad decision. I think it's a better name than S25 Slim would have been. Is it as good of a name as iPhone 17 Air might be? If that's the real name, maybe not, but I get how they got there. In terms of the phone itself, the tease at the end of the presentation did not show the phone on screen. I wish they had. Instead, everyone had to go mob exactly one demo station that they had in the arena that we were in to see kind of like models hanging like suspended of the phone, suspended in midair. And it was
which is
chaos.
Incredible to me because this is not a brand new piece of technology. This is a Galaxy S25 that's a millimeter thinner.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know exact dimensions yet, but the rumor was 6.4. I would say it didn't look any slimmer than 6 millimeters in person, but it was difficult to see, frankly. I got to see it from the side, which means I got to see it from the front, basically, because they had the phones turned, obviously. So it was kind of difficult to get any kind of photos of the frame itself, but it looks slim. It does look different, we should say, than the renders that leaked last week. It's only got 2 cameras. the entire chassis looks a little different than I think what we were expecting based on those renders. But at the end of the day, it is a Galaxy S25 that is thinner. We'll have to wait to learn more. The rumor was May. I wouldn't be surprised if that was true, considering they teased it. But I don't know if they do another Unpacked. I don't know if they just kind of announce it like it's an FE device. I don't know where the pricing is. I don't know where it fits into the structure of this S25 series. I have a lot of questions about the S25 Edge, and there are not a lot of answers here.
Yeah, I don't think this will be the cultural shaker that Samsung wants it to be, but I guess it's nice that there's something interesting coming from the S25 lineup later this year.
Yeah.
And that they're bringing back the Edge name. Sure. Fine. Do something with it.
I've worn them down.
Yeah, exactly. Fine.
I don't know. Like I just think that like I get why they would name it that. I guess. I understand your complaint that it doesn't have the curved edges, and so why would you use it? But my rebuttal to that would be that the curved edges were actually bad, and that it's good that they're not coming back.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, objectively, I think curved displays are less useful than the downsides of just having like bad palm rejection and all that stuff. But did the Edge brand carry any weight when it was around for 4 years? Like, no, not really.
Mm-hmm.
It disappeared in 2017 or whatever. So
yeah,
I don't think a lot of people have nostalgia for it.
We'll see. I think that's the play.
Let's talk about the S25. So we talked a bunch about it last week. In fact, if you listened to the show last week, it's more or less accurate. I mean, nothing we said last week turned out to be wrong. No. It's just that now you've been privy to the products. I've seen them too.
Yep.
We can actually talk about how they look, how they feel, what substantive changes there are on the hardware and software side.
Or lack thereof.
And then like generally what the vibe is like, because a lot of the content that I saw and read this post embargo was like, where are the changes? However, these are phones that are primarily for people who they don't have an S24, they have like an S21 or S22. And for those people, this is a big upgrade.
Yeah. I mean, Samsung straight up positioned it as a phone for S22 or S23 owners in our briefing, which frankly, I think like an S23 owner would not get a ton out of this upgrade. Maybe an S22 owner just because that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip was not very good. But generally speaking, I don't know if that would be a smart upgrade unless you got a killer deal, obviously. Yeah, these are even for Samsung, I think slim upgrades. Like I think the specs sheets are surprisingly unchanged. What I would say is that like these are certainly phones that are focused on AI first, right? Samsung is pushing this as like a piece of hardware designed to run all of the software things they want to do. But the problem is that like if you look at the spec sheet, it's like, okay, so you definitely at least put like 16 gigabytes of RAM in here to like future proof it, right? The way Google did with their Pro models, like all of that. And they're like, no, it's still 12, just like the S24 Ultra before it. It's like, okay, did you make camera changes? And they're like, the Ultra's got a new ultra wide sensor in it. It's like, okay, anything else? And they're like, log video. And that's kind of the story of this phone as you go down. You're like, well, did you change this? And the answer to everything is like, yeah, like 5%. It's like 5% different.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a bad thing. It's like, did you change the S Pen? They're like, yeah, we took Bluetooth LE out of it. And you can't do any of the Bluetooth LE things anymore. From a design perspective, the small S25 and the S25 Plus look virtually identical to last year's phones. The Ultra gets a new design that is closer in line with those phones, and I think all the more generic for it. I think this is a phone that feels like it's lost its identity in a way, and I know that this is starting really overtly negative, but I struggle to see why anyone would buy this over just like finding a good deal on an S24 Ultra. There are good deals on this phone, so that at launch at least, so that's part of the other thing. But yeah, it is one of those things where you kind of look at it and you're like, I don't know why you exist other than we needed a new model this year. We needed to put the Snapdragon 8 Elite in a phone and so on. So those are kind of my initial thoughts. That comes off really negatively. I would say some of the software stuff seems promising, although in my hands-on a couple of days ago before I got my own unit, I would say most of those demos let me down. in various ways. Like some of them are cool on paper. The idea of being able to like type conversationally into the settings menu to find what you're looking for is smart, but in practice it kind of just works. Like it's just like a slightly better search menu. It doesn't feel that much different than any other search menu. Stuff like
Right.
that. I haven't really taken a lot of photos with it yet. The few I have been totally fine, not outstanding by any means, but not bad either. I do I did stumble on one of the most infuriating changes I've ever seen to any piece of software, and this might be too minor, but it is so insane that I need to talk about it. One UI 7 seems to default to not putting your notifications on the lock screen at all, and you have to dig into settings to fix this.
Oh, weird.
So you'll get the icons at the top, but by default, it is set to icons only
Hmm.
and not like the big thing on your lock screen.
Okay,
Um,
that's super weird and like minimal, but
it's one of those things where it's just like I don't know why they did it, but yes, it was a first impression with the phone where I'm like, why am I not seeing my notifications come in? And the answer was because they were hidden. Yeah, so that's a lot of like rambled thoughts, but it's kind of where I am with this phone, which is that it's mostly okay, but I'm a little stumped as to what to make of it as a whole.
so my first question, because this I don't think was adequately answered in
Sure.
any of the content that I read, is there any software that is S25 exclusive that will stay S25 exclusive? Because what I heard on stage was
Yep.
that some AI features that went to the cloud are now local.
Yeah.
So the Ada Elite is more powerful and the NPU in there is more powerful, and therefore they can offload that to the device. But does it seem like any of these features that are Samsung specific, because we'll get to the Google Gemini integration shortly,
Right.
are going to be exclusive long term to the S25?
We don't have specifics, but in my briefing, they straight up told everyone that they would be. In fact, I could pull up the quote to be honest with you because I tried to write down the quote as it was being given to us. But anything that they can get running on older hardware, they want to bring to older hardware. So they didn't say anything specifically, but they were like, if it will be supported on an older phone, we would like to bring it there. And then
Got it.
specifically had some line about like, unlike some of our rivals, I assume referring to Apple limiting Apple Intelligence to a select group of phones.
Yeah.
So the answer is like, it sounds like they intend to bring as much of this as possible to older devices. It might be that like some of the on device stuff here is not on device on the S24 Ultra, maybe, or something like that. But yeah, I would expect that a decent chunk of the Samsung specific stuff makes its way at least one generation backwards. Maybe not to the small S24 because it's only got 8 GB of RAM, but certainly the Plus and the Ultra.
I mean, that also does limit the up. Like, again, we've talked a little bit about AI feature fragmentation.
Yeah.
Samsung hasn't been, they've been pretty good about backporting AI features to a lot of their older devices. And I think because there's less of a focus on privacy, at least implicitly, there is a toggle that will limit what you can do on the phone if you just want it to be local, right? There's a very clear toggle. It will shut off a bunch of stuff that sends your data to the cloud. But it does appear like most AI, Galaxy AI features that are cloud enabled will just be backported to iOS 7, to One UI 7 when it eventually hits like the S23, S22, S21 line.
Yeah.
Insofar as like, can the phone support it natively at all?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the importance of this upgrade is far less clear than the company is making it. And I think what I end up thinking about is like car makers just cycle their models every year, and then every 5 or 10 years they get a major redesign and a major structural update. But in general, like an Acura MDX is the same for 5 years, and it just gets
Right.
like minor improvements. And they don't hold press conferences
Right. I was
to
going to say.
announce the new Acura MDX. They give you a press release, and some influencer goes to like Alaska to ride it on some ice, but that's
Right.
it. And I just wonder if it's not the fact that Samsung is making iterative updates, but that they just make such a spectacle about the
Yeah.
iterative update, and I think that's the disconnect for me.
Yeah, I think if, and in fact, I've thought the same thing about car makers is that the phone industry should probably emulate how car makers act about their mid-cycle refreshes. But it's the same thing if this was marketed as just like an S24s or something, right? Like I think the frame of mind around this phone would be different, but you sit in a big auditorium, right? And you watch this like very flashy presentation, and everything has to be the most hyped up, right? It's
Mhm.
you're sitting there listening to them talk about their new camera system, and it's like, what new camera system?
Yeah.
Of the three phones, like one lens is new on one of the phones, and sure, you can say that you've got this upgraded visual engine or whatever, but like Samsung says that every year, and then we use the phone and we're like, it's got all the same problems as last year's. So GM might do a lot wrong or something, but like typically when they're like, we've got a new Equinox, it's very similar to last year's, as you said, like it's a press release and they highlight the 4 or 5 new things and they move on. And I do think that like maybe that's where we should be with these phones, because there is nothing here that is worth any kind of fanfare outside of like maybe the Edge. And even then, we have not seen what is going to make the Edge special beyond the fact that it is slimmer than the phone that is currently in your pocket.
Okay, so let's take our cynical heads out of our asses for a second and treat these devices not as the iterative updates that they are, but the products that Samsung is trying to announce, right? Like
Sure.
on their own and in relation to the OnePlus 13 and the iPhone 16 Pro series and all that jazz,
Yeah.
how are they? In the sense that, the S25 and S25 Plus are basically identical. The only thing that I can see change is the SoC. And the Ultra has a new ultra wide camera and a slightly larger display, slimmer bezels, it's lighter. All three phones are lighter than their predecessors.
Yeah. That's a nice change, to be honest with you. Like the Ultra does feel noticeably lighter, at least to me, than the S24 Ultra, which I have next to me too. And it's more comfortable to hold. The rounded corners make a big difference. The S24 Ultra dug into your palms if you dared used it without a case. And that's not a problem here with the Ultra. But at the same time, as I mentioned kind of up top, it's missing those sharp corners and those curved side rails that had been there since the Note days. And it feels like a phone without an identity, which is okay. But I wish Samsung would kind of find what makes it stand out compared to Apple and Google, because I think both of those companies have found a visual language and Samsung is not, or has left it behind. But
Yeah.
realistically, it is more comfortable to hold than last year's. That's a big change. The display is as good as ever. The bezels look very slim. It is a modern phone in every way. I find it difficult to pinpoint what is going to feel drastically different than last year's model, I guess. Like even trying to not be cynical, I'm looking at it and then I'm looking over at my S24 Ultra and being like, I don't know what to highlight here. Like I don't want to be that guy that people are listening and being like, all right, go talk about Apple then, guys. Like I don't care. But like it is not a bad phone necessarily. It is just one where you look at it and you're like, I have seen this product before.
And yet, this is also the best Android phone for most people in this market. Unless you're like, it's just true. It's a capable smartphone that does everything you need. And it's just a matter of like, what's more important to you? If you go to,
Wait, which of the three is the best phone for people?
well, it depends on your budget, but I would
Okay,
say like
because I would say that the other thing is that like I don't know why you would pay for the Ultra over the Plus. Like I don't see $300 worth of difference here, and
yeah,
that was true last year too. But I think it's even more true this year, where it's like, yeah, the display is larger, but like I think it's kind of cumbersome at this point, like 6.9 inches. I think
yeah.
the S Pen does less than ever, so I don't know why you would need that.
Hmm.
But I agree with you. Probably the regular and the Plus are default Android experiences for most people. I just like I don't know. I feel like we should be asking for more.
Yeah, I think both of those things are true, right? Like Samsung is resting on its laurels, and it's also offering like a genuinely great hardware and software experience.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I'm more interested in, I guess, is that software experience, which will come to older devices. What is that actually like? The demos that I got were pretty short, and I don't think they were
Yeah.
as detailed as the ones that you did. So Tell me about the AI additions. A lot of it's like based on the foundations of Gemini, but it's like Gemini plus Bixby. Like what's going on with that?
I mean, to be honest with you, I actually didn't get super in-depth demos either. So I mostly just know what I know from having used the phone over the last couple of days. But yeah, I mean, where do we want to start with the Samsung specific stuff or the Google
Yeah,
and
let's
Samsung
start with
stuff?
that, and then we'll move into the more general Gemini stuff.
Sure. So there's a few different things we could talk about. We've talked about the now bar a little bit, which isn't maybe necessarily. Sorry, I'm trying to unlock this phone, so I have it open. Isn't necessarily AI powered, but is certainly one of the big One UI 7 things. There's the Now Brief, which is a AI powered Google Now clone, but it's much more limited than Google Now. It basically, I opened mine just now, and it basically gives me weather, calendar, and like a random news alert. I couldn't tell you why I just got them when I did, but it is promising. It just needs, I think, more integrations. With the side button, they want you to really use Gemini now, but it's got its own like. I guess this is kind of getting into the Google stuff, but it's got a new look. The Gemini pop-up that is rolling out kind of first on the S25 Ultra or the S25 series, and then coming to other phones. That is designed a little bit more to take up less space and also be a little more multimodal in how it's using your display and like whatever either text or speech you want to input. There's also some agentic AI stuff that, to be honest with you, I haven't even found on my own unit yet. Like I've been trying to figure out where it is and I don't remember. So I guess the setting search is not working particularly well. But
Let's talk about that though, because
yeah,
that's a big part of this, and that's more of the Google specific like additions. But basically, what it looks like now is that you can bundle different actions together.
right.
So you can ask Gemini to do more than one thing at a time, right? So find a recipe and then add it to my Google Keep, or find directions to a restaurant and then send it to my wife over WhatsApp or messages or whatever
Right.
app is supported. And that is not Galaxy specific. It's going to be rolling out to the S25 series and the Pixel lineup at the same time, and then it'll come to other Android phones later, soon actually. And Google says like by the end of this month or early next month.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's nice that this is all going to be S25 on day one, but let's go over the actual changes that are coming to Gemini, because I think they're quite substantial, more
Mhm.
so than like most of the Gemini stuff that's happened recently. I think they're quite interesting. So starting with the fact that you can now use images, videos, and files within Gemini Live. So that was a big part of the kind of missing piece of Gemini Live. And Gemini Live, if you're not familiar, is the feature that Google added to Gemini where you can just have a conversation. It's basically just a chatbot, a voice-based chatbot. Now you can ask it to look at images or videos or upload files for it to examine, like you can with regular Gemini, but now this is a conversation.
Mhm.
It's rolling out to the S24, S25, and Pixel 9s. And then it says, we'll expand to more Android devices in the coming weeks. Plus, in the coming months, we'll bring Project Astra capabilities like screen sharing and live video streaming first to the Gemini mobile app on Android. I'm not really sure what that means. If you do,
No, I'm
I'd
in
love
the
to
same boat.
know.
No, I also don't know.
Screen sharing. Like you can share your screen with Gemini and it will tell you what's on your screen.
I mean, but that already kind of sounds like circle to search in a way. So like, but maybe it is kind of like an extension of it is somewhere in between circle to search and a full conversation with Gemini.
Yeah. So the next is the ability to add more extensions and then bundle those extensions together. So there are extensions for a lot of Samsung apps like Calendar, Notes, Reminder, and Clock. And then you can daisy chain the extensions into a single request, which I like. And then finally, you're going to be able to add more devices to the ability to long press your side button, which is nice, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, that I don't really particularly like that feature, but it is what it
Mhm.
is. And then there's a bunch of updates to Circle to Search. So I don't use Circle to Search that much, to be honest, and I haven't found a lot of use cases for it. But other people Our friend of the show, Michelle Rahman, and others use it all the time and say that it's been like a game changer in terms of how they look up and search for stuff. You can now
Samsung straight up said that 20% of their customers with devices that support it use it every day, which is nuts.
Is that on
if that's
purpose
true.
though? I can't.
I don't
I
know.
don't believe that.
I mean, they made it sound on purpose, but like
Yeah.
I'm not there in the room when they're using it.
So you're getting the ability to see AI overviews and visual search, which is, I guess, a nice way of just quickly summarizing something that you're visually searching for, and then you'll be able to make a phone call or add things to your calendar. You can send an email or just tap on a link and it'll open Chrome. That's just a single tap now, so it's using OCR. And then there's a bunch of other small things. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that Samsung and Google work together on something called Galaxy Watch for Kids, which is a kids first experience where you can convert an existing Galaxy Watch to work with Google's Family Link app and basically set a bunch of parental controls, lock down the watch, but also use Family Link to like check where your kid is. You get some specific watch faces and apps. This is neat. This is kind of something that I think my daughter would really be into, especially since most kids' smartwatches are garbage. So if you have like an older Galaxy Watch, even though this doesn't work with older Galaxy Watches, it only works right now with the Galaxy Watch 7 LTE, which is actually quite an expensive smartwatch. But I would say like this is not just going to stay on that device. It'll probably end up being brought over to a whole bunch of other Galaxy products. This is a really nice feature that I think a lot of parents will take advantage of because a smartwatch is it's a good phone replacement, and most parents don't want their kids to be on their phone or have a phone. And this is if you have an LTE powered smartwatch, this is just a really good way of keeping tabs on them.
Yeah.
You can make phone calls. There are some apps. You can text. You could find them. Yeah. I like this.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. I also like that they partnered with a bunch of brands and to make apps or watch faces that kids would like for that. Like, I think that's like an important step in making the watch feel like a phone to a kid, which I think if a kid wants a phone or something and you get them the smartwatch as a replacement for it, I think making it feel as much like a phone as possible is like a good way to approach that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Other than that, there's not a whole lot more to talk about with the S25, and that says a lot, right? This is a very, very small update. Is there anything else on your side that you think is worth bringing up?
We should say that it's Qi 2 ready.
Yeah, with a bunch of cases that you can buy separately.
Yeah, you need an optional case.
Just like the OnePlus 13. So Samsung's not alone in this, but of all the Android manufacturers that didn't manage to put magnets in their phone, I'm pretty disappointed that Samsung is in that list. Like,
I mean, this is another case where it's like this is a change that you could have made that I think would silence critics like myself from being like, what are you doing every year? Like, what is this device? Like, what am I supposed to think about this device as a change from your last one? And something like we are the first truly significant, no offense HMD, but truly significant like Qi 2 Android phone, I should say. I think that would be like a big, meaningful upgrade. And it's not like they couldn't do these accessories on the side. Apple does both. I think that would have been a smart change, but they didn't. I mean, even changing kind of the battery situation at all. I understand that Samsung has for a decade now been wary about pushing their battery tech too far, but like these batteries are unchanged from last year. The charging speeds are unchanged from last year. Like I would have liked to see a 52 or a 5300 milliamp per hour battery in the Ultra instead of the 5000. Like I think there's a lot of spaces like that where they could have made small tweaks that added up to something that was, I mean, we kind of talked about that with OnePlus last week or whenever we recorded that show where it's the OnePlus 13 is not meaningfully different from its predecessor, but it's got just enough small changes along its path that it feels a little more meaningful than maybe it truly is. And Samsung just isn't even putting the work in there.
Lastly, we'll touch a little bit on Android 16's first beta. So this is by far the earliest that a beta has been announced for a new phone. We're not even out of January yet, and we're getting the first beta. Usually in previous years, the developer previews were unveiled in February.
Right.
So now we're a full like month, 2 months, 4 months ahead of schedule in terms of beta announcements. That being said, we've already had a couple of developer previews for Android 16, and this is the first time that we're getting some user facing features on the beta.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? So we have some changes to the way that apps will look on
Yeah.
larger devices. And I think what it's doing is it's basically making app scaling more predictable. So if you have an app that is designed to run or has been like updated to work properly with Android 16, you're not going to have like separate manifests for each screen DPI.
Right.
You're just going to be able to say like this is a small, medium, and large display, and it will scale properly. The
Yeah.
upside here for people on foldable smartphones like the Pixel 9 Pro Fold
Mhm.
or the OnePlus Open or Galaxy Z Fold series is that if your app can work in landscape, it will now scale properly. If there's a landscape mode enabled for tablets, it should just scale properly. And
Right.
right now, that's not always the case.
Right.
So that's great. And
Yeah.
that's going to happen over this year. And then the Android release next year in 2026, app developers won't be able to opt out. So this year for Android 16, developers can opt out if they don't want to support this for large screens. And next year, they won't be able to opt out of supporting it for large screens if they want their devices to support Android 17. And then I guess later on, 2028 or 2027 and beyond, the changes will come into effect for small and medium sized displays, which are less of an
Yeah.
issue.
I think this is a great change. This is exactly the kind of like the no opt out attitude that I want to see from Google moving forward, to be honest with you, about features like this. Like, just you have the power to put your foot down and say you need to support larger display devices. Like, you should do that. You should use your power to do that. I think that is an example of Google using its force for good.
Yeah, agreed.
I also want to say, because the next thing we're going to talk about is the one that I'm actually the most excited about, and that's live updates, which is just basically just oh my god, what are they called on iOS?
Aren't they called live
Live
updates?
activities?
Live activities, yeah.
Live activities. It's live activities, but for Android. I love live activities in general. I think it was a slow start, but I think a lot of app developers now support live activities on iOS, and it's a great feature to have contextual information on your lock screen about an Uber ride or delivery, anything like that. I like seeing we've seen third party versions of this on Android, right? Like there are OEMs that have built stuff like this into their specific versions of Android, but I like just seeing this come to Android as a class of notification that developers can utilize with their apps.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the live activities feature on iOS. I think the more apps that get added to it, the more useful it becomes.
Yeah, agreed.
Although it's built for the dynamic island, it doesn't only work on the dynamic island. And
Yes.
Android developers have sort of taken the dynamic Android manufacturers, rather like Oppo and Honor, have sort of stolen that idea, even though it doesn't have a dedicated 3D. Most of these phones don't have that space set aside the way that
Yeah.
it does on iOS or the iPhone, but they leverage the fact that there's just screen real estate up there that wasn't used in the notification bar as a proto dynamic island. And now with Android 16, APIs will explicitly support that so that it's not just like the manufacturer's own apps that are using private APIs to work with live activities. By 2027, 2028, we should have most Android phones working natively with live activities or live updates, whatever they want to call it, similarly to iOS, which, if you're going to copy an iOS feature, might as well be that one because I think it's actually quite useful.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. As with many other betas, there are a lot of other small updates, API changes, accessibility and privacy improvements. I'm not going to go over those. If you want to check it out, you can check out Mishal's extensive coverage on Android Police. As we know, there will be two major API releases this year for Android 16. There's going to be a major one for in Q2 when they release Android 16 prior to the presumably Pixel 10 series. And then there will be a minor, probably 16.1 or 16.2 update later on in the year that will bring a bunch of smaller API improvements and features. But other than that, this is our first beta. We'll do some reporting on it. We'll talk about it more next week once we have it on our devices.
It's crazy that Google's timeline has us 2 months out from a platform stability milestone. Like it is nuts that it is January and we are here. Like it is a strong chance, not a guarantee, but a strong chance that Android 16 like launches in earnest at I/O, and that's crazy.
Totally, and I think that's great. That's great for everybody.
Yeah.
All right, Will, we're going to stop there. I want to know what is making you happy this week, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah. What is making me happy this week? I have been watching. I'm not a reality show person. Largely speaking, I'm not like a reality TV person. So when I say that Peacock's The Traitors is like truly excellent TV, I please know that I mean it. It is captivating television. Daniel, are you familiar with The Traitors?
I'm very familiar with the show. I've never seen it, but there's a Canadian version that I see billboard ads for all the time.
Yeah. There are like many international, because it is an adaptation of, I think, a British show. But the US version is hosted by Alan Cumming, who's having the time of his life on this show. Is truly just like steals the scene every time he shows up. It is a bunch of reality TV shows from other or contestants from other shows, right? So like Survivor people and Big Brother people and Real Housewives people, right? So you have a decent mix of people who have been on competitive shows versus like standard reality television. And they're essentially playing werewolf or mafia or whatever version of that you have played, where there are people who are killing off contestants on the show, and you have to figure out who they are or you lose. It is amazing. Very over the top. There are lots of twists and turns. I think it's Thursday, so the 4th or 5th episode of the season airs tonight on Peacock. I can't recommend it enough. Again, I like Survivor and like very casually, and otherwise I'm not a reality TV person. So like when I say that the show is very fun to watch, please know that it is as high of a recommendation as I can give.
Okay, I like it. My thing this week is I watched A Real Pain over the weekend.
Yeah.
With
Kieran Culkin,
Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. Lovely little film, really well done. I really enjoyed it, and it's on Disney, I believe, right now.
Yeah, it's on. I know it's on Hulu in the US, so that would
so then it would be on Disney Plus here and Hulu in the US. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. It's 90 minutes on the dot. It's not a big investment. It's not going to make you sad, even though it is about two cousins that travel to Poland to visit a concentration camp and where their grandmother grew up. But it's not a sad movie. It's really subtle and just very, very well acted, and I really liked it. So highly recommend it.
Kieran got a nomination this morning for the Oscars.
Oh, good.
That I have not seen it yet. It's on
deserved.
It's on my watch list. I love Kieran Culkin, so I will. It is a must watch for me.
I think he's going to win. He won the Golden Globe, right? So I do think he'll win.
Yeah,
he'll win this one.
Yeah, he's great. I will absolutely check that out.
All right. Well, that's the show. We did it fast and loose this week, but there wasn't. We can only give you.
There were other things we could have talked about. I did you see the Oppo leak, the foldable leak, like or all the teases or whatever about how thin the what will eventually be the OnePlus Open 2 is going to be? Yeah, I'm so excited for that phone.
Yeah, it'll be cool.
HTC got bought by Google again. We could have talked about that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was on the show notes that I.
It's fine. It doesn't matter. It's just funny.
HTC's AR VR team got acquired by Google.
Yeah, but no, this is Samsung's week, and regardless of how we feel about the phones, they have sucked a lot of the oxygen out of the room.
So they're going to be available February 3rd,
7th,
February 7th. Sorry, and a $799, $999, and $1299 respectively.
Yes, prices did not go up this year.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of other stuff going on just in the world of like tech and politics and stuff that we're not going to have time to talk about today.
Oh, so was there political activities this week?
There were a few things that you might have noticed.
Cool.
Project Stargate is a thing that happened that I feel I have strong feelings about.
We're not even going to be able to talk about TikTok actually, which is like was a whole other shit show.
Yeah, I can't wait for the U.S. government to be a 50% stakeholder in TikTok. That's exactly where I saw this going a few months ago.
Yeah. Anyway,
nationalize TikTok, baby. That's exactly what we should be doing. Anyway, all right. Well, let us know what you think about the S25 series. podcast@androidpolice.com. And anything else that we talked about? Are you installing Android 16 beta? And if so, what do you think of it so far? Until next week, I'm Daniel. That's Will, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
I like this new outro. Bye.
I'm just flying by the seat of my pants.
No, I like it. Let's keep it.